I'm back. All right, here we go.
All right, so I kind of want to start a little bit talking about your journey into MMA. I'm sure a lot of the interviews you've had, people are talking about, Calvin and Rob. But I'd like to start a little bit in talking about you and what got you into MMA. Obviously, you have some fights as well. So what ultimately led you to the sport?
So I wrestled in high school, and then went to college and just wanted to stay active. So I played lacrosse and just kind of picked it up, did it for a little bit to stay active, and then coached lacrosse in grad school. I got my MBA, and then I got out and I just had this like void. Like I just missed being on a team. I missed competing, and I remember seeing like UFC on TV, and I remember thinking like, oh, it'd be fun to just do jiu-jitsu, get back into grappling a little bit.
Yeah.
And then my girlfriend's mom at the time was like, oh, there's a club down the street. So I went and tried it, and just kind of got hooked. And one of the guys I was, just doing, rolling with, he was getting ready for a fight. He asked me if I'd spar a little bit. I didn't even know what sparring was. And then he had me corner him for his first fight. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll do one fight. And this is probably back in 2005, 2006 is when I started. And I was like, maybe I'll just do one fight. And then I ended up overall having 15 fights. And as I was doing that, just little by little started, cornering a lot of my teammates, started getting a lot of them fights, guys like Rob and other, some of his teammates just started getting them fights, and it just kind of happened.
It's funny because every time I talk to UFC athletes in particular, like I spoke to Jasmine Jasudavicius, who she's 4-0, up and coming. She started MMA about 6 months ago, and same sort of thing. It was just, she saw two people fighting and was like, I'd like to try this, give it a go. And then I find a lot of MMA fighters end up finding it simply by accident, which is kind of neat, because usually when you think about like football, it's like you're passionate about it from a young age and you follow that route. But with MMA, it's a bit different.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't something I planned on doing. No, I wasn't like into fist fighting when I was growing up, getting in fights on the playground or any sort of trouble. I was like real cautious. So when I got into MMA, a lot of people were like pretty surprised that I would even do it. And yeah, it was a challenge yourself, kind of, it's because it's scary, man. It's not like scary getting hit or anything like that, but it's more of like the fear of like, putting it all out there in front of a group of people you don't even know that are in the crowd, getting in a fist fight in your underwear. And, it's kind of wild. It's a little, humbling at times. And it's also like, it's a good, like, it's just a good challenge to kind of feel that rush and go through a whole camp, get in shape, be disciplined, and then go out there and test yourself.
It is very personal. Like if you lose, it's on you, like you get humiliated in front of everybody. Whereas if you're playing football and you lose, there's 30 guys, 40 guys. So it's not as embarrassing almost. And same sort of thing in victory. If you win, it's all on you as well. Obviously you have coaches and stuff like that, but the glory really falls on the fighter. From a fighter's perspective, I mean, you're 8 years out since your last fight. Do you miss that aspect at all, or are you, I've moved on from that. I'm into coaching and managing now.
Oh, I never had like any delusions of going to the UFC or anything like that, because I didn't have my first fight till I was like 30. I didn't get into it till I was like 26 or something like that. So I never had any. I wasn't like one of these young kids that gets in now. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get rich off this and go to the UFC. Like it wasn't like a thing back then. It was just like I want to challenge myself, and so I think it was, I had different goals in the sport, and so I don't think it was like something to really miss. It was something I was doing to challenge myself, and then as I was doing that, like I realized, like, wow, I really enjoy helping these other fighters get ready, whether it be helping them find fights or helping them get ready for a fight or cornering them on fight night. Like I just kind of fell in love with the whole process, and I really feel like I was starting to make an impact on other people. And then I saw these young people that were in there, guys like Rob Font, and that kind of came in, and they weren't like special at all. They were just like another guy in the room. And then, little by little, we keep making these improvements each camp. And, then all of a sudden they're turning pro, and then they're winning some pro fights. And, then fast forward, now all of a sudden they're in the UFC. And it's just it was just like a thing I did to help my friends. And then it turned into, an actual career.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm sure these past few months have been some of the hardest from a coaching and manager's perspective. You have pandemic, the world's at a standstill. I find one of the hardest things, and how do you keep these fighters motivated? You know, like you're like, oh my god, I'm not going to fight. Sports aren't sports aren't up. How do you get them to be like, okay, you got to keep training, you got to stay on weight. Something might come up. How do you motivate them and prepare them for a fight that may or may not even happen?
So I think there's like two different hats that I'm wearing. One is a coach and one is a manager. So like with Rob and Calvin, I'm their coach and their manager. And then there's a bunch of other guys that I manage, and I might help coach them a little bit and give them some tips and stuff at training sessions, but I'm not their head coach. Um, so with Rob and Calvin, like as their coach, like I don't have to motivate them. Like they're where they're at because they're self motivated, and that's nice. As a coach, if you have to, especially in this sport, if you have to start motivating your fighters, they're probably not people you should be investing time in. And I've made the mistakes of some of the most talented guys I've ever been around just aren't as motivated as you would like them to be, and you can't want it more than they do. That's a saying that me and some of my coaching colleagues will kind of bounce around. Is like I can't want it more than the fighter does. If I do, it's a huge red flag. I just should put my time and invest it into somewhere else. If they're not willing to invest it in themselves, it's not fair for me to take time away from someone else and put it in them too. So. Um, guys like Calvin and Rob, you don't have to motivate them. Like, if anything, you have to kind of pull the reins a little bit and pump the brakes because they're going to overtrain. So it's just about being smart. But when I put my manager hat on, that's where it gets a little tricky with like you said, like, hey, just keep training. Something could come up. And that's where it's a lot of like, I don't want to say hand holding because that's kind of has a negative connotation to it, but it's a lot of like reassurance and like, hey, just trust the process. Like, you're kind of in MMA purgatory right now, like especially with no local MMA going on right now. I have a couple guys going nuts, and you can feel the pressure. Like maybe they're frustrated with me, but it's not they're not really frustrated with me. They're frustrated with the situation, and you feel for them because you want to give them a good answer. You want to be like, hey man, the next fight's in 6 weeks, but it's not. We don't know. Especially right now, there could be another round of shutdowns and just more restrictions. So we don't really know what's going to happen, and it's easy for the guy that's not cutting weight and not trying to peak to tell the guy that is, hey, just keep training, just be ready to go. And some people will be ready to go, and some people won't. And at the end of the day, they're the ones that have to look in the mirror every day when that call comes. And I always say this, like, you're gonna go to bed the night before a fight. You've weighed in that morning, the weight cut's done, you have a full belly. You're gonna go to bed that night. You're gonna put your head on your pillow. It's just gonna be you in the room, and you're the one that's gonna have to live with those thoughts of like, did I do enough? I wish I would have done more of this. I'm glad I did this. Like whatever those doubts are, those little things that say like, I wish I would have done more. 6 weeks ago, backtrack into that. Like, all right, what are those doubts that I think I'm going to have? Like, now let's make sure I don't have those doubts. And those guys got to get up every day, look in the mirror, and know that when that call comes, they're either going to be ready for it and excited, or like, oh crap, I wish I had done more. And the guys that are ready, those are, that's the champions in the future are those guys. It's not the guys that, oh well, I guess we'll see what happens, and we'll make the best of it, and well, I'll get this shot, and then I'll at least get one more. So the guys that are always going to look in the mirror and be ready, those are the guys that, you kind of want to get in bed with and go all in and, take it on this journey like I am with Rob and Calvin right now.
No one's been more ready than Calvin. I mean, since the pandemic, he's the first fighter to get 2 wins. And the first one was ultra impressive. Incredible finish over veteran Jeremy Stephens. And then this past weekend against Dan Ige, very, very dominant win. I thought I had it 4-1. I thought he looked super impressive, but there was a lot of with the Jeremy Stephens fight. It was supposed to happen an earlier date, and then it got pushed. Describe that from both a coach's and a manager's perspective, and how did Calvin take that? As in, like, was he like, okay, well, we'll have to just run it back, or we'll push it at a later date? I'm sure, knowing him, I'm sure he was all for it. But describe all that and the difficulties you had with that.
Yeah, I mean, we started getting that call in December about, hey, it looks like we're going to fight Jeremy Stephens, but we needed to get clearance for an injury that we had. We still needed to get ortho clearance. So like we kind of went into like a little bit of training for a few weeks, not even knowing if we were going to get cleared to fight. And then we went and we saw the ortho, they cleared us to fight. And then it was supposed to be March 7th. And then, week 1 of like official camp, oh, the fight's probably getting moved. Hold tight. And then, it's another week of training like that. And then it's going to be April 18th. All right, let's get ready for that. And then the pandemic hits, and it's like, well, let's keep training because we're the only card that's not canceled. So you're training the whole time for a fight that you don't even know if it's going to happen in a location that's to be determined. During a pandemic when we really didn't know how bad the disease was and like if everybody was just going to die or how contagious, we really didn't know. So it was just like the circle kept getting smaller. These doors just kept shutting in our faces. But, we didn't get discouraged. Calvin didn't get discouraged. He showed up at all the sessions. He kept dieting. And then finally it got, it was announced that it was going to be in Atachi Palace. And then about a week before we're about to fly out, probably 4 days before we're about to fly out, the show gets canceled. And then it's like, hey, you're definitely not fighting at least till June. And then we're like, all right. So, Calvin was like, no, let's keep training. Like, I'm going to double down on this. Like, let's keep going. So, he ate a little bit on Easter weekend that, the next day he was at my house lifting. And then he did a little bit, with his family for Easter. And then that next Monday we got the call, actually, it's May 9th. And we were like, all right, let's just keep going. And, and then we had that fight and then Jerry missed weight and, he just took it all in stride. And, I think this pandemic's really brought in the best and the worst out of people. There's a lot of people that are using this time to level up and take advantage of everybody else's, time off. And then there's people that have been kind of like using it as an excuse to pull back. And, when this thing's all said and done, there's going to be people that are in line for title shots that might not have been, 6 months ago. And there's going to be people that might have been in line for a title shot 6 months ago and now are at the back of the line. So I think Calvin is, the former. He's taken this pandemic. He's the only fighter in the UFC, like you said, to go 2-0. And now he's, aside from the champion, he's the only fighter in the featherweight division that has 3 wins over top 10 people since 2019. So I think he's definitely leveled up. He's shown a blueprint to, some of my younger fighters of like how you handle adversity, how you handle uncertainty, and truly how to be a professional. We have a saying on our team. It's focus on what you can control. Like I'll try to control all the bullshit on the back end and figure out like how we can control more. But at the end of the day, like you show up, you listen, and you work hard. And that's all we can control. And it's the Bill Belichick mindset. It's like one session at a time. It's like, all right, we don't know what's going to happen in a month, but I do know this morning we're wrestling. So let's put in 100%. And then after that, we'll worry about the next session. And Calvin really does embrace that. And I think some of these younger fighters, Calvin was 14-2 before he got in the UFC. And, he dealt with a lot of adversity before that. He dealt with some injuries. He dealt with time off. He dealt with, owning a business in his personal life, having like adult bills and all that stuff. And then some of these younger kids, they get up, it's 18, 19, and they get to 3-4-0 and they start to think like it should be handed to them. And then at the end of the day, like some of those people should, the Macy Barbers of the world, they've earned that too. It's not a knock on her. Like she got in really young. She's obviously very talented, but there's a lot of other people who are kind of that same age and they see, oh, well, Macy Barber did it. This person did it. Like, why didn't I get my shot? I feel disrespected. And then you see them questioning their team and questioning like, oh, do I have the right manager? Do I have the right coach? Do I need to go to this mega camp? And I think, there's no patience, Calvin even says like, man, like these guys don't know how good they have it. Like with having like contender series and stuff like that, it used to be back in the day, you'd have to wait for the Ultimate Fighter and hope that they'd do your weight class within the 3 years that you were still fighting on the local circuit. But nowadays it's like every summer, every little prospect, you get to 4-5-0 and you're probably going on the contender series and getting paid 5-5. Whereas someone like Calvin Kattar was scrapping around on the local circuit for 10 years, getting 16 fights against some top quality competition, for probably 1,000 and 1,000. So, these young kids, they don't really understand that the path they're crawling down, how easy it is versus what the fighters like Calvin and these other guys came up through, earning like a legitimate shot.
Yeah, I mean, his rise is really reminding me a lot of Gilbert Burns, where they're doing it the right way. They're fighting frequently. They're not getting negative publicity. In a way, negative publicity is good publicity. I mean, you hear guys like Mike Perry, Conor McGregor, Jorge Masvidal, like this negative attention that they're getting is really rising them to the top and getting them title shots. As a manager, how do you like get your fighters to just be like, look, do it the right way. It may take us an extra year. Do it the right way. Don't be negative. Don't start calling people out. Don't start doing negative things. How do you do that from a manager's perspective? And I mean, I'm sure a lot of these fighters are just like, why don't I just start calling people out because it gets attention?
But I don't think there's necessarily like a negative way or a positive way. I just think there's the organic way, which is just be yourself. If you're a guy that wants to call people out and talk crap, then go ahead and do it. It'll come off as authentic, and then it'll be like, all right, I get this. This guy's kind of a badass, or he's doing it. He's not putting on an act. He's not being fake. He's not doing it because, oh well, I saw that's what you're supposed to do. Those guys, you can through that pretty clearly. It's pretty transparent that they're just putting on a show, and then you can also kind of tell when guys are holding back and not being themselves too. So I always just coach them like, listen, just be yourself, do what feels right, but don't do it because you think that's what you're supposed to do. Obviously, don't be inappropriate. Like there's certain lines you can't cross. Like, you're not going to start throwing out slurs and stuff like that. But, just do what feels right. If you want to call this guy out, you'd love to fight him, go ahead. Like, but don't call him out because someone told you you're supposed to call him out. Because, it looks fake. I think it doesn't resonate well with the fans or even the promotion. So I would just say, just be yourself. The right way is just be yourself, and they're going to like you or they're not.
I'd like to talk a little bit about both Calvin and then Rob. Obviously, Calvin's been the more active of the two since the pandemic. Like we said, he went 2-0, super impressive, both against Ige and obviously Stevens, in super dominant fashion. I think it really plummets him to the top of the division. I mean, there almost seemed to be like a little bit of a line between those top five, the Holloways, Ortegas, the Beats, and then the Calvins and the Emmets. I think this really plummets him up there, and in a way, it almost like leapfrogs him ahead of the Ortegas, who haven't been active, Zabit, who arguably Calvin could have beat if it went 5 rounds. So I mean, there's a case for him to almost have a title shot, especially if Volkanovski wants to stay busy. What do you want to see next for him? Do you want to see him take maybe one more fight, maybe against a Max Holloway, or are you like, man, if the title fight's there, take it?
I mean, I think it'd be silly for us not to take a title fight if it presented itself. If we're healthy and you know, uh, if we're healthy, it makes sense. It's it's an opportunity to win a world title, which is Calvin's goal. It's we always have these like checkpoints that we're looking to go do, and we just keep climbing this mountain. The view never gets any better, but we get hungrier. Um, we're not satisfied with a win over Jeremy. We're not satisfied with a decision over Ige. Like, yeah, there's things that we can take out of it that were positive. But we're not done, like we have these big goals. We have grand goals. Calvin's trying to set himself up to have a prosperous future financially and build a legacy for him and his family. And we're on the way to doing that, and obviously a title, once you win that UFC title, that's never stripped. You're either champ or former champ the rest of your life. And so it'd be silly for us to say no if the opportunity presented itself. But at the same time, if it doesn't present itself, then we get to challenge ourselves against someone else, like a Max Holloway or an Ortega or something like that. Obviously, that's a challenge as well. And I think a win over those guys almost guarantees you a title shot next. So I think we're looking at like 1 or 2 fights away, or maybe the next fight. I think there's some things that are going to happen that are out of our control. Like you said, does Alex want a very quick turnaround? If that's the case, who's available? It looks like Yair and Zabit are fighting, Zombie and Ortega are fighting, and then Max is just sitting there. So if Max wants a quick turnaround, okay, well then does the UFC really want that trilogy and give him a rematch with different judges and see how it goes? Then maybe he gets it and we're sitting around. Or the UFC doesn't want to go down the trilogy route and Alex wants a quick turnaround, so maybe we skip the line. You've seen it in the past where people get rewarded for staying active. Gilbert Burns, he was able to leapfrog, was it Leon Edwards or what's his name? You stay active, you beat good guys, and anything's possible. So a lot of it, is out of our control with some decisions that Alex and his team have to make, and then the UFC and what direction they want to go with. But yeah, man, I think we're right there. You look at the guys in front of us just aren't active. Mad respect to Alex. He's shown the willingness to. He says he'll fight all comers. Like he wants prospects. He said it in interviews. He's watching Calvin's fight. He was interested because he's looking at the young prospects to see who's going to fight in the future, and he's down to fight whoever the UFC wants him to fight. He'll take on prospects. He's ready. So respect to him, and he's an ultimate champion. And then Max Holloway is the best that's ever done it in the division. He's sitting right there too. So, those guys, they're fighters. They fight. it doesn't seem like they're scheming to get where they want to go. Whereas, everybody else between us and them, man, these guys are like trying to handpick opponents. They're trying to stay active. They're trying not to do 5-round fights because they don't feel like they're in shape. We just did a 5-round fight on a month notice, like we didn't ask for a 3-round main event. We did a 5-round main event because that's what main events are supposed to do. You're supposed to be ready. And then these other guys taking a couple years off, and then, and I know some of it's because of the pandemic and different things, but, you just got to stay busy, win fights, and good things are going to happen. So, if we end up getting the Alex fight and we get to fight for a title and bring a belt home to Boston finally, we've earned it. And then if it doesn't happen, then we're going to go and earn it with another fight. So it's, activity gets rewarded, and you create momentum and then you ride it. And I think right now we have good momentum.
Speaking of that Ige fight, I promised you we could talk a little bit of shit about Eric Nixick. What was it like having him corner opposite you?
It was, so I'm like a pretty friendly guy. Me and Eric are really chummy. We'll message back and forth on Instagram whenever I see him at fights. It's always a big hug. I respect him. Like, I see a lot of fake coaches in this space, guys that are kind of doing it for the cameras, that the guys that you see them going out and getting hammered on fight week and coming in late, and how prepared are they for the sessions? And it's like, it's not like a fight week to them. Like, and I'm not calling anyone in particular out, but everybody that's been on a UFC fight week can see it's like, wow, you're here for this guy's about to go and try to double up his money and not get staples in his forehead and go to the hospital. And here you are getting hammered the night before the fight. Like, there's a time and place for that, and I don't think it's on a UFC fight week. And then I see, guys like Eric who are, in the room holding mitts and working hard and, being at practice and bringing that energy of someone who's committed to it. Me and him had conversations about that before, that, I think he's one of the good guys in MMA, and it seems like he's not trying to get rich. He's not trying to get famous. He's just trying to help his guys win, and he's in the trenches, with them. And, so I have a lot of respect for him and his team and what he does. And when we got the fight, I was like, I was literally just messaging him that morning about another fight. And then we got the Ige fight, and I was like, oh, geez. And I posted something on Instagram, and he DM'd me. He's like, hey, bro. I was like, all right, let's, beers on the winner, but, it's all business, And then we saw him at the airport when we were checking in for the flight, and he walked up, and I was kind of cold to him. But I'm like sitting right by Calvin, and Calvin doesn't play that game. Like, you're trying to steal his money. So, and I kind of feel the same way too. It's like, we're buddies, but not until the fight's over. Like, when the fight's over, we can be friends again. But right now, I have to go into a certain headspace, and we have to get ready to go to battle, and I have to get Calvin in the right headspace. And me being over here being chummy with you, it's not real, because I'm not feeling like I want to hang out with you on fight week. Because I'm trying to kill your guy, and I'm trying to outcoach you. And after, it's all fine. Whether I win or lose, I'll be fine with you. But like right now, like I'm in that zone, and obviously Calvin's in the zone, and we're gonna do our own thing. And so he kind of came up and he read the vibe real quick, and he was like, okay, all right. And then after the fight, right in the cage, he's like, no, we're all good, man. He's like, I saw you guys. I saw that's how we're gonna play it this week. That's fine. He's like, I respect that. And then now we laugh about it. Right after the fight, they're about to leave. I was like, no, guys, get back in here. Like, let's take a group photo. Like, because right after the Jeremy Stevens win, we took a group photo with Eric and Ngannou out back. It's like, we're kind of a big MMA family. As much as we try to kill each other on a weekly, every Saturday night, we are a small knit community, and we're just trying to help the sport grow. And, so it felt right. They were about to walk out. I was like, no, get in here. Let's take a group photo. And I thought that was pretty cool. That all our coaches and his coaches and Calvin and Dan got to take a photo in the cage together, so I thought that was pretty nice. But yeah, it's not cool having Eric on the other side. I was joking around today. I was like, it was offensive, but it was no, it was cool. It was an honor, man. I've gotten to test myself against and obviously it's not me in there and it's not Eric in there, but like, I'm competitive, and so I go through this camp. It might be midnight, and I'm trying to go to bed. And I'm thinking, no, I got to watch a little bit more video. I got to outwork Eric, And then if it's not Eric, it's, Eric Del Fiero last time. And next time, hopefully it's Max Holloway or Alex Volkanovski's coaches. And I'm going to try to be better than Eugene, so I look at, from that point of view, is like I'm competitive as a coach. I want to outwork them, and I want my fighters to outwork their fighters. So it's I respect him, and he's from a great camp, and he's got good fighters, and it's cool to challenge yourself against the guys that you see on TV every weekend, and that come from these big camps that have a lot more cycles than we do, and try to test myself against them. I've had the honor of cornering against like Faraz, Mike Brown, like Eric Del Furo, Eric, just a lot of guys, Rufus, like pretty much like every major coach I've had, I've gone in there, and, Jackson's, all those guys, like, and it's pretty cool. It's like seeing those guys that, like, even before I was in MMA, seeing them on TV cornering fighters, and now I'm going head to head with them and trying to, play this game of chess and, and beat them. So it's keeps me driven, I guess.
Yeah, Eric is really one of the nice guys. I mean, I reached out to him, I talked to him as well, and I mean, you can really see it why fighters are successful. Like, usually it comes from a strong camp, and I mean, Francis Ngannou is the scariest guy in the UFC, in my opinion, and I think it really shows the work that he's done with them as well. And I mean, same goes to you with the success that both with Calvin and Rob. As for Rob, I mean, obviously he hasn't been as active as Calvin. I'm sure he's dying to get back in there, and he's kind of in a very similar spot to what Calvin was before this, where there's a little bit of a gap between those guys at the top. You got the Marlon Moraeses, the Cody Garbrandts. I'm sure he wants to jump into that title conversation. Do you think he has to take a step back and maybe fight like the equivalent of a Dan Ige in order to really make a statement, or do you think that maybe he might be able to get a shot against a Cody or a Marlon or one of these guys?
So he beat Ricky Simon last December, and he tore his ACL in that fight. So he had reconstructive surgery, I think January 22nd. And so he's about a month away from getting cleared to go into camp. So we're thinking that he'll fight probably, October, November. And, he's riding a 2-fight win streak, even though it was Sergio Pettis 2 years ago, Ricky Simon last year. So he's just had a little bit of a healthy scratch for 1 year because the Lineker pulled out the week, the night before weigh-ins. And then we didn't get a quick turnaround. So we fought Ricky in December. And, but at the end of the day, like, he's still riding a win over Sergio Pettis, and he dominated him. And then through Ricky Simon around the cage, who just beat up Ray Borg. So, I mean, he's coming off 2 big wins, and I think they're kind of getting lost a little bit in the quality of wins just because they've been spaced apart, and then he had an injury. But, Rob, this will be his third 1-year layoff since he's been in the UFC since 2014. He had a medical suspension, then he had a healthy scratch, and then now he's got the knee injury. Every single time he's come back, he's smashed a guy. He came back after his first layoff and knocked Joey Gomez out, I think, in the first round. And then after the next layoff, he, beat up Ricky Simon, who was, a lot of people thought that was a nightmare matchup for Rob because, Ricky's this pressure wrestler. He's so good. And, and Rob was able to take him down, and Ricky couldn't hold him down. And, he pretty much beat Ricky with one leg. And all he's done this last year is level up. He's done his rehab. He's been paying attention to what the doctors and the PT staff are saying. But, he's working a lot on like the mental game. And then now he's able to finally move around, and he's working on a lot of stuff. Like he's getting better, even while doing rehab and PT. He's getting stronger. He's getting better. He's got like a whole new mindset on the game. So, we're really excited to see him get back in there. It really doesn't matter who he fights, because if you said a year ago, like, what's Rob's night, or a year and a half ago, what's the worst matchup for Rob, it would have been like a Ricky Simon. And then he just went out and took arguably one of the best wrestlers in the division and just kind of toyed with him with one leg. So who are you going to throw at us now? There's not many guys that Rob can't beat as long as he shows up. He laid a little bit of an egg during the Assunção fight. He took his foot off the gas pedal against Pedro Munoz. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, he took the John Lineker fight in his third UFC fight, and in Brazil against, in a soccer stadium with 45,000 people. And it was a great learning experience. He learned off that loss. And then, he learned off the Munoz loss, and, he just gets better after losses. And then now he's riding 2 wins, and he's coming off a year layoff, and he's done a lot of mental growth in that year. I think the time away makes you realize, like, okay, like, this is how much I love this. And it gives you a little bit of a reset. And, the sport's so much mental. And when you're away that long and you get to see what Calvin's doing and he's been part of that rise with him, like, I think he's starting to see like how close he really is, it's just cool. Like him and Calvin going through this whole thing together and, pushing each other. So I think he's motivated by seeing Calvin's success, in his layoff, he's seen Calvin headline 2 shows. He's seen him go from being ranked in the top 15 to now being ranked 6. And, hopefully the rankings change soon and we're a little higher, but now Calvin's in title contention talk. And Rob's the same thing. He's riding a 2-fight win streak. Depending on who we fight next, it could give us that big fight, So he's right there too. I'm excited about seeing what, him come back and who we get.
So I'm going to ask you one more, and then I'll let you get back to your night. I've been dying. I would have spent everything in my bank account to go to Fight Island. As someone who was there, who lived it, who experienced it, did it live up to the hype?
I mean, it's so hard because it's like, obviously the whole thing, it's like a commercial for Abu Dhabi, this whole Fight Island. It's really like the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. They're really trying to go all in and like, push Abu Dhabi as a tourist destination and a vacation spot and everything. But it's so hard because we didn't really get to see it. We stayed in one hotel that had one road that went to the beach, and that was really all you got to see. And it was cool. I mean, and there couldn't have been a worse time of year for us to go. It's like the heat of the summer, 120 degrees with like 70-80% humidity. So it was like really tough to be outside. But it was definitely cool. It was just so frustrating because you're that close to Dubai, which you hear all about, and it's like we couldn't go. And then there's this like, you look out your hotel and there's this big red building, the Ferrari building, like the Ferrari racer or whatever it is. You want to see what's going on there, but you can't go. And then off in the distance, you see these cool buildings, but you're not allowed to go over there. So it was like so frustrating because you could you're in this like amazing part of the world and you literally couldn't go anywhere. So it was tough. And, I don't think we got to eat a lot of like the local cuisine or anything like that, or go to any of the fine restaurants. We were kind of, stuck in the hotel and eating, a restricted menu on what they had there. So I don't think we got to see like what Fight Island can really be if it was actually open, but, man, we have a cool story to tell in 20 years, like the time we trained through a pandemic and knocked out Jeremy Stevens in Florida. And then a month later on 1 month's notice, went to Fight Island and headlined a card and came back with a big W. So it's, we always say we're hitting these checkpoints and we're making memories, and like the wins and losses, those will always be there. But the memories that we make with our friends, on the long plane rides in the hotels while under quarantine and all those things, those are the things that like we're going to be talking about when we get old, and the inside jokes and stuff like that. So it's been unfortunate that we're having this quarantine, but, we've really taken the time to, do some stuff that we'll be talking about the rest of our lives.
All right, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you coming on here, and all the best to you. All the best in Rob's recovery, and hopefully Calvin gets a big fight, man. I'm rooting for you guys.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right, man. All the best.